Welcome to the Roost News Podcast, a place for all things volunteer. I'm Curt Springstead, and I'll be your host today. Starting a new volunteer program is always a challenge, and in this episode, we're going to be talking with representatives of AARP New York about their efforts standing up a volunteer organization in Westchester County, a suburban region just north of New York City. They'll share with us how it went from a handful of people to 40 in just 3 years. We'll learn about their advocacy work, the Speakers Bureau, and other community engagement efforts they deliver to support that area. And to help me tell the story today, I'm joined by Robyn Haberman, the Senior Associate State Director of Community Engagement at AARP New York, Todd Alper, and Karen Katter, the co-leads for the Westchester County Volunteer Team. I'd like to ask each of you just briefly tell us a little bit of what you're doing on a day-to-day for AARP.
Sure. I can start. I am the staff point person here. I am a Senior Associate State Director, as Curt said, on the Community Engagement Team here in AARP New York. I am based in our Albany office, but I oversee what we affectionately call Upstate East. If you're familiar with New York, it covers a wide swath of land starting at Westchester County and going up to the Canadian border. I've been here about 5 years, and in addition to running the volunteer teams, I do a lot of our programming, and I'm our statewide lead on livable communities. And I'll turn it over to Karen.
Hi, so I am the Westchester co-lead for AARP for the volunteer team, and Todd and I work together to lead, as you mentioned, Curt, a team of about 40 volunteers. And I would say one of our main roles is really to help facilitate, support the volunteers in all the endeavors that we do within Westchester County. And you'll hear more about how we structure the team. But we're really here to, I would say, help the volunteers achieve their goals. I'll turn it over to Todd.
Thanks, Karen. I'm Todd Alper.
Sure.
I live in Westchester, New York. I've been a volunteer with AARP coming up on about 3 years, and I'm a retired teacher, and I'm looking forward to sharing about my journey with AARP.
That's terrific. Thank you, guys. So let's just start at the beginning. So who or what was the driving force behind this initiative? Maybe reflect on it and, how the goals maybe changed or morphed over time and as you've achieved some degree of success here. I don't know who wants to kick off.
I can start just with some context and background. When I started, like I said, New York is a very big state. I'm about 2.5 hours north of Westchester County. And when I started, the county was sort of split between me and then one of my colleagues in New York City. So there's kind of a north-south cut through with one of the highways, but it was very confusing to say, someone would come in and be like, oh, are they north of 287 or are they south of 287? It was a little weird. We were also just coming out of the pandemic, so we didn't have a very clean list of volunteers. We had some people on a list that weren't very active or participatory. And eventually the whole county fell to me. And I said, well, I have to figure this out. We've got some really important legislators down that way. We get a lot of prospect leads from that area. And so it was sort of a nut that I wanted to crack. And Kathy Kynes at OVE has a really great expression that I love, which is dance with whoever's in the room. So we just set up a lunch and said, if you're in Westchester County, you're on our list, come down. We invited people who are currently listed as volunteers and prospects. And we had lunch with, just 4 or 5 people, but they were really good people and they stuck around. But none of them wanted to take ownership of the team. And so we would get a few more here and there. And then I met Todd. And I said to Todd, what we would really love to do is set up this volunteer leadership model. And Todd was like, well, I can do that. And I said, well, that's wonderful. And then I jumped on that, and I'll let Todd kind of tell his story from there.
Yeah, thanks, Robyn. So, Curt, I met Robyn about 3 years ago. I first came to AARP through a support group that I participated in, which I found online.
Mm-hmm.
And when I dug a little deeper into AARP, I realized there's really no instruction manual or owner's manual for yourself for being an older American. And pretty soon, as you start to fit that category, you realize that a lot of issues come up, and AARP really has the resources to help deal, whether it's financial, emotional, medical. There's a lot of issues that come up, and I thought this is a great organization. It was founded by a teacher, so a lot of their mission and vision really resonated with me. And so, again, my introduction was really as someone who was utilizing one of the support structures. And I thought, let me go to a meeting. And I was lucky enough at that initial meeting to meet Robyn. Robyn shared that they were looking to build a team in Westchester. And kind of the fates aligned. In college, I had the opportunity to found and start a local chapter of a national fraternal organization. And so that was really one of the things when I look back on some of the things in my past, that was a great experience. And 40 years later, that chapter is still going strong. And I thought this might be an opportunity to use some of those skills and some of the, really to kind of repeat that process. And so that when Robyn approached me about it, it really resonated. And, I felt grateful for that opportunity. I think it's important to retire to something
Hmm.
rather than from something. And that
Right.
really, selfishly gave me an opportunity to say, this is something that I can attach to, feel good about. And so I feel lucky to have been in that position. And that's kind of how I got started. And then lucky enough early on, met Karen, which was really, also key to this where we are today. So I'll turn it over to Karen.
Sure. So I have a background in working with older adults. For my most of my professional career, I worked in Medicare and Medicaid, managed long-term care. And my last full-time position, I actually was a COO of a startup for family caregivers. So I have a long commitment and just belief in supporting older adults. And
Hmm.
I had always wanted to be involved with AARP, especially because of the family caregiving platform that AARP is such a strong proponent of. And when I was sort of changing, I'm not totally retired, but I pivoted a little bit to do more care management on a one-to-one basis. I was really looking to volunteer, and I heard that AARP had volunteer opportunities. So I thought, wow, this could be great. And I reached out to Robyn, and Robyn and I talked, and right away she said, "Oh, I want you to meet Todd. I think you should talk to Todd." And I was happy to become a co-lead. It wasn't what I expected or set out to do, but I was more than happy to do it. And as soon as I talked to Todd, I think we hit it off right from the get-go, and we've had a great collaboration and a really good partnership. And I really do think that is a part of why the group is successful is that we work really well together. And it's really been a pleasure working with Todd. And I think the team feels our connection, and it really helps to, bring people in and keep the volunteers, you know, with us as a team. So it's been really good. And it's going on 2 years for me.
Okay.
So I was behind the curve when, Todd started Todd and Robyn really started the initiative. I just kind of piggybacked on.
All right.
The
Well,
one thing
Great
we all have
story.
in common, Kurt, is we have a hard time saying no.
okay. We should have another meeting on that another time.
Yes.
Anyway,
That's another
uh,
support group, Todd.
right. That's all. Yeah, that's the other support group.
Right.
Anyway, this is all interesting, and what people are probably starting to gather. I understand that the core of this effort really is these monthly meetings we have with the team, and I'm just sort of curious. If I were to show up in it, because I only live a little ways from Westchester myself, what if I would show up and attend one of these meetings? What's it like? Is it a staff or volunteer driven? What's the dynamics? What's going on during the meetings?
Do you want me to take
Yeah,
a
please.
start with it? Sure. Well, first of all, it is all volunteer driven. Todd and I we set the agenda, we get feedback about the dates, we try to get the majority, of people who can come on a certain date. But I think one of the key elements to structuring the meetings is that we have three buckets, Speakers Bureau, community engagement, and advocacy. You mentioned them earlier, Curt, and we really center the meetings around these three areas. And we
Hmm.
have at least one leader of these subgroups who's responsible for engagement, getting volunteers, organizing with the partner organization, and they really drive these separate buckets. Um, and we also weave in, Robyn and Kemba in New York City. There's a lot of AARP activities going on, shredding events, advocacy events. So we make sure that we also bring the larger AARP activities and incorporate them. We weave them into the meeting, into the agendas. But a lot of it is really reporting on the activities of, these three buckets. And I wanted to say also, one of the things that we've done that I think has been really helpful is we also created what we call summits. And we've had about 2 or 3 summits, which are sort of deeper dives where we've spent not just an hour and a half, but a few hours really looking and setting goals, setting our agenda for the year. And the volunteers have been really excited and eager to participate. And that's really helped sort of frame us for going forward, what we want to achieve in, the coming months or the coming year. So that's essentially how the meetings work, but it is all really volunteer driven.
Okay.
Todd, maybe you
Yeah,
want to.
I'll just add to that. I think one of the things Karen and I have in common is we're both have strengths around building systems and structures. And so, in addition to organizing the meetings around those 3 core areas, which are really the core mission for AARP, we've kind of built out coordinators to handle some of the logistics. So we have a membership coordinator on the team. We have even a logistics coordinator. So
Right.
when we go out to meetings, we have Frank and Jean, our logistics coordinators. They get materials from Robyn. They'll help disseminate it. And then just communication structures. So we have, at least 1 monthly email, as Karen mentioned, with our upcoming events. But we'll send out an agenda prior to team meetings. We'll send out minutes to everybody if they want to add any items or bullet points to our team meeting minutes or to the agenda. At the actual meeting, we'll have someone who takes minutes. We'll share the minutes out after the meeting. And then we keep all of that in a Google Drive. So it's accessible even if you weren't able to attend the meeting. You can feel caught up and you know what's going on. So those are the types of systems and structures, along with the summits that Karen mentioned, that I think really bring a structure that's been instrumental in helping the team grow.
Okay.
And for my part, I like to think of myself as the back office. I'm not there typically, and it's sort of like a proud parenting moment, like when you send your kids off to school for the first time, and you're like they're doing things, and I'm not there, and it's wonderful. So I've really been able to kind of let them do their thing, and then I look forward to the email after the meetings of who needs a T-shirt and who needs a this, and whatever supplies they need, we ship down and make sure that they have both the AARP perspective of what we're working on and all of that information to share, and then whatever supplies they need, and we just kind of do the back end.
Can I add just one point to that? In that, Robyn, it's, Karen and I always remember that this is AARP and this is our AARP meetings, and Robyn's our sounding board. So we are constantly going to Robyn saying, is this appropriate to do? How do we do this? How is it aligned with AARP? We want to make sure to stay within that lane. And Robyn is constantly there to provide support and guidance for us. So while she may not always have the ability to be there in person, I think we communicate with her regularly, and it's really, we get our marching orders from Robyn. And I think it's important to note that we really don't do anything that Robyn's not aware of and helps us guidance. And that's really been extremely valuable.
Right. I was recently working with another state, and the whole volunteer team has as a mantra, don't get so-and-so fired. Who's the,
I like that.
I'd like to remember that one.
That's their number one goal. So they always run everything through.
That.
Very good.
Yeah.
All right. So it's like most organizations that I've been in volunteer, there's a combination of people processes, if you will, that you folks quickly figured out. You've added some tools. You're using, technology and so on. But I'm sort of curious. You've got these 3 buckets of such. Are the members, do they tend to kind of divide, or are there some that cross the from team to team and within that? I'm just wondering how that mix goes. Or do you see people come in with one goal and then getting drawn in to help with the others?
I would
I'll take that quickly,
take
real
that.
quick.
You go ahead.
I think our secret sauce is the social connection. And I
Okay.
think once people come in, I mean, we're all kind of driven by this. We want to have an impact and we want to make a difference in our community. But I think one of the things that keeps us together is the social connection. And so while people may come in with strengths in certain areas or a desire to have an impact in a certain area, the social bonds that have kind of grown organically, barbecues at people's houses, just supporting one another, having that community has been really something magical.
Okay.
Mm.
Very good.
Yeah, I would also add though, Kurt, I do think some people come in and, for example, they say, I just want to do advocacy. I'm not interested in Speakers Bureau. I'm not
Hmm.
interested in community engagement. And we are totally fine with that. We
Sure.
basically accept any
Hmm.
volunteer to do any type of activity, we'll support 100%. I think that Todd and I accept people for we're happy that they show up.
Right.
And if they have a passion or an interest, we certainly want to support that. And sometimes there are people that sort of cross all
Yeah.
lanes, but others feel that this is really an area for, I want to only do Speakers Bureau because that's what I'm comfortable with. It's fine.
Okay.
So,
Very
which
good.
is great because then they sort of become their own, become experts in that area.
That's probably a good idea not to try and force them into some container, let them
No,
live
I
in the
mean,
one
we
they
don't.
brought, right? Very good.
Yeah, I think we don't. Yeah, we don't do that.
So Robyn kind of mentioned this earlier. I live in tiny New Jersey next door, so I know the Manhattan is one thing, upstate New York is different. So New York's a big place and a diverse place. So just you're representing what's going on in Westchester County. I'm just curious, are there plans, efforts to either do you interact with similar groups across the state? Are we trying to spawn or replicate this? I don't know who has that background, that story.
Yeah, I
Robyn, maybe.
can I can speak to that a little bit. So yeah, we do have volunteers across the state. There are certain pockets that are more active. We really modeled this kind of self-led leadership after some AARP resources at the national level. This is sort of like the dream that everybody wants to achieve. This is the pinnacle of success, I think. But I have a colleague on Long Island who has several teams stood up throughout the region in just those two counties of Nassau and Suffolk. So when we launched this, I really looked at the materials that he had already produced. I think Todd went out to visit one of their meetings to kind of get the lay of the land. And now, based on this success of this model, we're taking it up north a little bit. We have a team in the Mid Hudson Valley with a lot of really great volunteers that have been with us for a long time. And just again, trying to find the right person to take ownership and leadership. And I think we're just about there. So we have a meeting with them coming up next month. We really do point to the success of Westchester to showcase that.
Mm-hmm.
We had a visitor at our last meeting from, I think it was it Dutchess County, which is just north of Westchester, come to our meeting to just see how we worked, get some ideas to take back to his team.
Okay.
And yeah, we're always willing to share.
Right.
And
Well,
And it's been really nice to get the recognition. And recently, we were invited to meet with AARP CEO in their Manhattan office to
yeah.
discuss the impact the Westchester team has had in our growth. And that was a real honor to meet Dr. Maisha Minter-Jordan and to share what we've been able to accomplish, but through the support of the New York office, through Robyn and Kemba specifically. And a natural next step is to want to share that. And this podcast is one way of doing it, but trying to sort of share that out with some of our colleagues in other areas of New York to help grow and anything we can do on that front to collaborate, whether we go join other meetings or have folks come join our meetings. Or to have cross collaboration, it's great for the organization, and that's one that we're proud of, and one that we want to help grow, and so we're happy to do that.
Yeah, rightly so. So I'm, given the nature of the things you're doing, you're clearly going to have partnerships in the community outside of AARP to make that happen. So can you help us understand a little bit of how, what these relationships might be and how you've cultivated them over the years?
I can start. one of the things that we do as a team is we do rely on volunteers to find and make the connections. And I'll give you an example. Someone who joined maybe within the last year, she has a connection to, it's called The Loft. It's a LGBTQ team organization for older adults. And she reached out to them, and they're having an event, I think in June for on Pride Week or Pride Day, and asked if AARP could participate. And they were really happy to have us, but they also charge. There's a fee, but when they learned that, AARP was willing to be a supporter, they waived the fee, and now we're, going to be there this year. And I think what tends to happen is once we show up one year, we get invited back again and again, which is great. So it's really a great way of building these relationships. And, that's just one example. I think another example, we have someone on our team, Dennis Sklenernik, who I'm probably botching his last name, but he's been really instrumental in building the Speakers Bureau in northern Westchester. And he has developed some great relationships with the libraries up there, senior centers. Again, so a lot of it is really volunteer driven, based on, sort of getting in the door. And then once you're in, we build the relationship. So I think I've seen year after year when we get invited back, it's really nice because we sort of know the lay of the land, and who's ever hosting is, very happy to have us.
Yeah, well, it must be a validation of your efforts because they invite you back.
Yeah, exactly. I
Right?
don't know if we haven't been invited back yet, but
That's right.
we seem to be doing repeats, so I think that's a good sign.
That's right. We're not
Yeah.
just cheap and easy. We actually are providing value, right?
Right. And it's a great way also of getting new volunteers. I think that's one of our big initiatives when we do go out into the community is making our presence known and really trying to engage people to volunteer. So it's a good source. It's a good way to get volunteers.
Yeah. And I'll just use this opportunity to shout out our leads in those areas. So, like Sharon Olang is our community engagement lead, and Sharon has a real strong ability to reach out to community organizations. So, for instance, there's a Salute to Senior events at the Westchester County Center. This is a really large event. It draws probably thousands of people, and we'll have a booth there thanks to Sharon's efforts. We were there last year. And these are great opportunities to be out in the community, meet people, and not only do we get AARP's message out there around important issues like saving Social Security, but we also can connect with people, and we've been able to get some volunteers that we've met out at these events to come join us at our monthly meetings, and so being in the community based on like Sharon's work has helped us grow. And then just before I forget, also want to shout out so in addition to community engagement, Karen had mentioned Speakers Bureau. We have Sharon Rothman, who's our Speakers Bureau lead. So Sharon works actively also to find partnerships. And then our advocacy leads, we have Ross and Alana, who are really have been initial members even before I joined, and I think that's one area we've always been strong in because of Ross and Alana. They've engaged with our local politicians on a not only local but statewide basis, and so they're kind of setting up those efforts. And through Ross and Alana, several of the volunteers meet with their local representatives. So that's how we get out in the community.
And one other thing to add that I think is important is that Sharon Olang for community engagement has built a relationship with the Department of Aging in Westchester County. And I think for anybody maybe starting a team, that's a really good resource to get to know and get a contact there because there's such great, resources that I think that's really helped too. Having building that relationship has been very helpful for us.
Yeah, we've done that. It's like joining an existing network. It really expands you quickly. Yes.
Yeah.
Anything else, Robyn, from your perspective?
Yeah, I'll just add one of the things that when we talk about next steps, Dennis and Sharon Rothman have been really great, again, about setting up all of these Speakers Bureau presentations. What we're looking at to maximize those is creating a more formalized partnership. So,
Mm-hmm.
having an agreement with them so we can create a registration page and market those programs in addition to their kind of in-house audience that they're delivering, then we can kind of share it out with our broader Westchester County membership through our email and our blogs and social media. So we can kind of next step those relationships into something more formal and get a little more, they say, a little more juice for the squeeze, and just make sure we're getting reaching as many people as we can while we're doing the work. So
Yeah.
that's what's next.
That's great. I think also you gave a great example of how, when we have these relationships, they kind of like we leapfrog each other. In other words, your AARP brings some mass and some validation to their program and gets some attention. But at the same time, it gets our message out to their membership with their endorsement, again, opening the door to more volunteers and more knowledge of our program. So it really starts to spiral in a big hurry. And you started to mention this a little bit in this thing is, so you're now at 40 members. That's it's a big team, but so how do you continue to recruit and retain these people, or have you had to tweak that? I mean, it was a bunch of you guys having lunch a couple of years ago, so it must be a little bit different with this kind of a crowd.
Yeah. Yeah, so mostly that's been through organic growth, just being out in the community. It's just something that naturally gets rolling. Once you get the ball rolling, the more we're out there, the more members come in, and then the more we're able to sort of get out there. But this is another, area where we can shout out one of our coordinators, Kathy Florakis. And so Kathy has really taken the lead as a membership coordinator. So anytime we have a lead of somebody who might be interested in joining our team, Kathy will immediately reach out and she'll engage with that prospect and let them know about all the great goings on. She'll encourage them to come to one of our team meetings. And then Kathy is a point of contact. They can always call her, email her with any questions about membership. And then Kathy and Robyn work closely together once that prospect is interested to get them through the AARP volunteer enrollment process.
Okay. So, I mean, a lot of this seems to be very much on the personal connection level, and I think that's always the heart of this. But it's easy to get lost in a big group. So, do you feel that there's a size limit, or that we have to think about when we do this to make it effective if we're going to follow your model?
We haven't said that we have to cap it because there is a sort of ebb and flow. Not
Okay.
everybody shows, all the 40 volunteers don't come to the meetings. People leave, new people come in. So it is, I think it kind of balances itself out.
Okay.
One of the things, though, that we've been very conscious of is just not relying on the same people over and over again. And, we can touch on that, but developing bench strength has been really an important factor for us. And that, we want to make sure that we've got people who are, not just saying they're volunteers, but they're actually,
Right.
stepping up and doing something. But I think also early on, I just wanted to mention, we did have some specific targeted recruitment meetings that was just to really recruit new volunteers, because we found also that people who are interested in volunteering as opposed to people who are already volunteering have very different they want different things out of the meeting. So it was a good idea to sort of separate out the two. I think since we've grown and evolved, we haven't had to have those recruitment meetings recently, but it was a good way to kind of kickstart the growth. I think that helped us a lot. And then Todd also mentioned that Kathy is our membership coordinator, and that position didn't really exist when we started. But
Sure.
as we grew, we felt that we needed someone who could really focus on new volunteers because they come not knowing, they need an orientation. It's really helpful to have that one-on-one. And you mentioned the personal connection, but it really makes a difference. So I think having that membership coordinator is really helpful in sort of managing the membership process.
Okay.
Karen and I are always kind of brainstorming back and forth what other positions. So we're looking for a communications director, Curtis, if you know anybody.
Okay.
That's kind of our next dream on our wish list. But like thinking a little bit outside the box of what would be, who do we have on the team? What are their strengths and what might be a position that they can take ownership of and kind of create these positions has really helped everybody have a role on the team, kind of like first base, second base, third base, pitcher. Um, and so kind of that type of thinking has helped us grow. And then just being flexible and understanding that this is volunteer, and that we are thankful for any time that, people are able to give. And
Hmm.
so trying to create some roles that may be just a little less frequent. So
Yes.
having that flexibility has been important.
Yeah, well, the nature of volunteers and certainly the population of our volunteers is that we still have life going on, and every once in a while we need to step outside and be a family member or caregiver or whatever. So that's that all those depths and background, and I love the idea of everybody has sort of a role on the team. Nobody's just a member of the team, right?
Yeah.
Everybody has it might be small, match their capabilities or their interests, but everybody's got a member. That's a great idea. So let's kind of see if we can close the loop a little bit here. So we started off with, there was a reason to do this. There was a goal in mind, and we've talked a lot about how you do it. I'm just curious, are you still measuring impact? Of what do you feel the impact has been on the Westchester community of your efforts? And give us a little guidelines on how you're going back up and saying to people, yeah, we're doing what we wanted to do.
Well, I'll just start off by saying one of the areas that I feel we have made a really nice impact on is on the advocacy side.
Okay.
Um, we mentioned we have two co-leads who really have been, with the team since the inception. But as time has gone on, they've really built a team around the volunteers they've taken up in their local, regions where they live. They've become the AARP advocacy representative, and they've gone to their local legislators and um, spoken about, the topics that AARP wants us to advocate for. And because frankly, AARP has a lot of prestige and a great reputation. They're very open and willing to talk to us. And I think it's been great for the volunteers. And, they've had sort of the talking points. They know what to say and they're very prepared. But I think it's been really, really valuable to have these members go advocate on behalf of all the things that, all the legislation that AARP is putting forth, caregiving, utility, um, bills, and just, Social Security, so many other things. So I think we're making a difference at the very local level, and that's very fulfilling.
Hmm.
Um, so I'll say that. But then I think Todd we did a little a little report that I think Todd can speak to.
This was
It's a
thanks to
little
one
bit
of our members,
value.
Dennis, but he really felt, and we agree
Yeah.
with this. We're doing this work. We should measure we should be intentional about
Hmm.
measuring our impact. So try to get information, how attended, what events did we have? Robin, with our volunteer, I don't know if the camera will see
We
this, but
can,
our
yeah, it's
volunteer impact report. We uploaded and it kind of spit out a nice impact report. But I can share it went through the amount of Speakers Bureau engagements we had. It broke it down by topics such as topics around fraud, topics around Social Security. So it broke the different types of advocacy work we did, who we met with, how many meetings we had, how many attendees showed up, and also with like the community events, what type of community events we had, who showed up, how many. And it was really amazing to, experience to create this report and to look back on it and say, wow, this is really some impact. We did a highlights page with some of the
Right.
larger events. And seeing it on paper in that way and getting to present it to Robin, I think was a proud moment for the team. And that's where that partnership with Robin also comes in, the ability to have some funding that Robin's gracious enough to take us out for a lunch to kind of celebrate the wins that we have, I think is a really nice something that the team can have the ability to get together and share and reflect. And I think it's important to take the time to kind of reflect back on that impact. And so we're grateful for that. And one last piece I would share that's not measured on this paper is the impact we've had on each other. I think this is really, we've created this just happened organically. It's not anybody's one creation, but a family emerged where
Mhm.
we support each other through the issues that arise that AARP is so closely connected with,
Right.
whether it be aging or medical or financial. Like I said in the
Right.
beginning, these are real issues and these are real people. And they're either impacting us directly or they're impacting our loved ones. And so that can't necessarily be measured on paper. And so, as much as we're proud of the impact we're having, we're thankful to be part of this national organization. We're thankful for the support we get. None of this would be possible without Robyn, without Kemba, the staff at AARP New York, and the mission and vision of AARP. And that's really what we're doing. And um, that's uh, it's exciting to do. Karen's nice enough to, the only thing I would say that's limiting our growth is the size of Karen's house because we
My living
we
room.
sometimes have the
We're
meetings
looking
in
for
her
a new
living
space.
room.
That's
Yeah.
our next agenda
We've gotten
item.
too big. It's a good problem to have.
But
Yes.
Right.
but those are the good things because this is where it's coffee in someone's living room. That really is where all the action happens. And that, we've met at Panera. Robyn's gotten us some great meeting spaces. But it's really about the connections that happen. And, I think, as Karen said in the beginning, we felt lucky that we have this partnership. And we hope that we'll continue to make an impact.
Right.
But we're grateful to AARP.
Well, it sounds interesting because you're not only having impact, you're organizing around things that believe, but for so many of us, when we leave the workplace, you've recreated a work family. That connection was so we didn't always appreciate how integral it was in our lives. So that's just a nice little bonus you've given everyone.
Well
Um,
said.
so and, at this point, we've probably whet some people's appetite. So if our listeners are trying to think that maybe they can try and replicate this in their state or in their region, what's kind of a couple of tips, things they should keep in mind as they launch into this initiative that would make it more likely to succeed?
Well, I can just start. I think a lot of it is there's a little bit of magic and a little bit of luck, but a little
Mhm.
bit of just recognizing people who can bring something to the table. Finding the right people at the right time. There is a little bit of serendipity with that, but it's also, you know, having those conversations when you get someone who's interested in volunteering, talking to them and figuring out what it is they want to do and what they're capable of doing. Todd was a brand new volunteer, and I think I talked to him one day and I was like, by the way, we're having this luncheon in like 3 days. Why don't you come on down? And we had a great conversation. And I was like, you know what? I can see this. I can see this
Right.
working. And I didn't know him long, but we took the leap of faith and we said, let's try this and see how it goes. And 3 years later, it's been just, wildly successful. So even if someone is kind of brand new to the party, I would say, figure out where they fit in and have a little trust. And, we always say to AARP National, we got to let go a little bit of staff and trust the volunteers
Mm-hmm.
to do the work. And it's working.
Very good.
I
Karen,
would
Todd, anything to
say,
add?
yeah, sure. I have a couple things to add. I would say start small if you're starting out.
Mm-hmm.
AARP, as we know, has a wealth of resources, information. I mean, even if you look at Speakers Bureau, for example, there's so many presentations you can pick. I think one of the things that we did as a group, which was very smart, not my idea, but it was very smart, we picked three topics that we wanted
Okay.
to focus on. And I think that helped the group because otherwise, we would have sort of been blowing in the wind. And I think this
Mm-hmm.
allowed them to say, this is what we do. And then everybody could kind of focus on the three topics, decluttering. I forget what the other ones were. I think it was brain health and
Fraud and
Broad.
fraud.
blood.
Yeah.
Yeah. But regardless, just, I would say keep it small in the beginning. You don't have
Mm-hmm.
to, boil the ocean. The other thing is that it took us a long time to get to a tool, which I don't think we mentioned yet, but I think it's really critical of sort of like a sign up board. If you want
Hmm.
to participate, how do you go about it? Email's very difficult to keep track of, and when you're working with so many people. So we developed a spreadsheet that we share,
Hmm.
and that you can just go in, you can put your name on, you can track who's going where, who's doing what. We alluded to communication before, but that's been a really critical tool, I think, just to help us stay organized and uh, so we can kind of keep track of all the moving parts. And every team member has access to this. So
Yeah.
that's important. And I think we would be happy to share that with anybody who's interested in using a tool like that. And I guess the third thing is just the bench strength. I mentioned that.
Hmm.
We're now at the point where we feel, we mentioned that we have these co-leads, one person for each group, but we really need two. We need backup when someone's not available. We want someone else to be able to
Hmm.
step up. So I think that's important as you grow to think about bench strength. And, if
Hmm.
someone's not there, you want some people to kind of step in and know what to do.
Right.
So those are my tips for
Okay.
for growing a team.
Yeah. I
Um,
would echo
Turn it
all
to
of
you.
those and just add, lean on the strength of your AARP staff, because they have the experience, they will guide you. They've probably seen the issues before. They have the connections and resources to reach out. And they will, help even if you don't have activities to get started in the community. There's plenty going on at the local and national level. Tomorrow there's a shred event where we're inviting the community to come in, bring their documents. AARP is providing a shredder to prevent fraud. Fraud is a big area that AARP is invested in. And so there's a lot. You don't have to reinvent the wheel or find
Mm,
activities in the community, national and at the state level. There are things going on that you can just attach to right away. And so, lean on that for support. They're always there, and they'll help guide you.
Okay. This has been fantastic. I mean, you've really made this feel accessible and something that we could do anywhere we wanted to do it. So before we kind of wrap up, though, is there anything I haven't brought out that you think is parting thoughts that you want to share with our listeners before they move on and maybe try this?
I will just share that I came from a corporate world and I was a manager. And, when you ask someone to do something, you expect, that it'll get done. And leading a volunteer team, I had to kind of take a step back. And I want to thank Todd for helping me to see the light because, volunteers, you mentioned, Curt, it's time.
Hmm.
And what's more valuable than time? People are giving their time. So I think it's really important, and I learned this along the way, that everybody who's participating is giving their time, and we value that. That's really, I think, valuing the volunteers and what they bring to the table has been very helpful in growing the team because everybody feels that they have something to add, they're contributing,
Right.
and we really work around what people want to do. So I think
Sure.
for me, that was seeing Todd in action. He was a good role model for me. So
Thanks, Karen. The
yeah.
same. Like we build on each other's strengths, and I'll just end by like thanking the team. Karen and I are really just here representing the team.
Hmm.
The real work is done at the team level and the contributions that they make. So this isn't we're sharing sort of the process, but the work is the team. So we want to make sure that we're saying thank you to the team. Although we're representing the team, this is on behalf of the team.
Right.
And everybody's played a role, large or small. It's all been essential to get us to where we are.
Right. Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And I
I'll
think just,
add,
oh,
oh,
go
go ahead.
ahead, Robin. No,
Oh,
go
I was
ahead.
going to say, I wanted to say a special thank you to my colleague Kim Tamari. You've heard her name come up a little bit. She is my colleague in the New York City office, and she is responsible for kind of all things volunteerism in New York State. And she has just been my best partner, cheerleader, collaborator. And a year ago, we would talk about the Westchester team and how well it was growing. And she'd say, one day they're going to have you up on a little stage at one of the national staff meetings. You're going to be telling the story of the Westchester County team, and here we are telling the story on this podcast. So she's got this little crystal ball, and She's usually right about things. And I also just wanted to say, for me, it's just been such a joy to be able to rely on these people and trust them and to watch the team grow. It's been, like I said, a little bit of magic and a little bit of luck and a lot of hard work. But it's really just very gratifying to see it all come together the way that it has.
Great.
Oh,
All right. Again, thank you so much. I mean,
close
really,
the loop, Curt. I was just going to say, sorry to interrupt you, just to close the loop, because I started out saying, you know, what our role was, and it's really getting back to sort of supporting the team. And Robyn supports us, and Kemba supports us, and we support the team. That's how we see our roles. So,
oh yeah,
just to close that loop.
yeah. Everybody lifts a little bit. That's great. So again, thank you so much for your time today. You've really kind of, as I said, given us a roadmap of how we can do this in our own communities, and that's a great benefit as well. So, and I also want to thank our audience for tuning in today. We encourage you to subscribe to our Roost News podcast channel on YouTube, or listen to the audio version on your favorite podcast platform, whatever that might be. And then, of course, please invite your colleagues to join us too. And on behalf of the Roost News podcast team, we thank you.